Afternoon, all, and welcome back. And we are here to talk about how to sustain, powering a sustainable future. Definitely, when we think of renewable energy, it's a kind of energy that we need coming in the future, because when we are shifting from the fossil fuels, we are looking at an economy that is going to grow. Research shows that it's going to grow by 2040. You're going to have a 25% increase of demand of energy. Definitely, it's a growing economy globally, and we are going to look at how then can we sustain power in this growing economy at this with my very able panelists. Welcome. I'll start with you, Caro. Please introduce your organization and talk to us a little about your organization.
Good afternoon. So my name is Carol. I'm currently the country president for Schneider Electric in East Africa. Schneider Electric is a global energy efficiency and automation organization. We play a lot in ensuring that the transition and sustainability of energy access as well as energy efficiency is driven across the world. And we've been named as the most sustainable corporation over the last 13 years. And we work very closely with many organizations, especially startups, to drive those conversations. We do have as well an investment in many impact funds. And at the moment, we've just recently invested in Gaia Fund. And I think the managing partner of Gaia Fund is in the room in case you need to have a conversation for an investment topic.
All right. Thank you, Carol. Josh?
Can you hear me? Great. Hi, I'm Josh Whale. I'm the CEO and the original founder of Ampersand. We are a battery energy company based in Kigali in Rwanda and also now here in Nairobi, Kenya. We operate a network of battery swapping stations where we lease pre-charged batteries to motorcycle drivers. These are all commercial motorcycle users, so taxis and delivery vehicles. We have 2,100 motorcycles on the road. We put the first motorbikes on the road about 4.5 years ago, and currently these motorbikes cover around 1.5 million kilometers every single week, and they cost the users about 35% less to operate than the conventional fuel vehicles. And what that means is roughly $700 a year, which in Kigali, for example, means doubling the net take-home income for our customers. We're targeting this segment across sub-Saharan Africa and beyond. Within Africa, we're really focused particularly on the fuel markets, because that's where we believe we've added the most value. We have a proprietary battery pack, software backend, and a battery swapping station configuration. This market's worth around $13 billion a year, and that's just fuel sales to motorbikes. Roughly 20 to 25% of retail fuel sales across the continent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Erik?
You hear me? Good. Okay. Erik Nygard, founder and CEO at Kofa. We're currently based out of Ghana and launched around about 2 years ago. Our business model has some degree of similarity to Ampersand in that we are building out a swappable battery network to provide energy access for multiple use cases. And really that is petrol generators and small-scale motorcycles or even small-scale vehicles that would otherwise use petrol. And I think the key advantage really to customers here is that you have a product that I'd say when it's electric supersedes the petrol equivalents whilst also saving them money. And we think as African cities urbanize quite fast and are going faster, you need to be able to find ways to create a resilient and reliable energy access point. So even in a lot of cities, you don't always have the grid fully rolled out into all areas. And if they don't have it, they will end up relying on petrol generators, for example, or with motorcycles going to petrol stations. But we think a battery network provides an access point that can almost advance the grid arriving, and when the grid has arrived, provides a resilient backup to it across multiple use cases. And we think this is quite a shift from what's happened out in the West, where the entirety of electricity really is run via your core transmission and distribution grids. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Erik. And Abel, what's happening in Nigeria? Turn it on.
So this is Abel Boreto. I'm an investment director at Novastar Ventures. Hello. So Novastar Ventures is one of the first and probably one of the largest VC funds on the continent. We do back businesses that are generating social, environmental, and financial returns or value for the majority of the population or the everyday person on the continent. We've made about 25 investments across East Africa and West Africa, and we have about $200 million in assets under management. And we've actually backed one of the leading electric bus companies on the continent called Basigo. They have operations here in Nairobi as well as in Kigali. And you know they're on the road to building probably one of the largest fleets of electric buses on the continent. And besides that, we've made several investments in the energy space. Solar Now in Uganda. We've also made an investment in Max in Nigeria that provides asset financing to vehicles, including electric vehicles and bikes for that case. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So ladies and gentlemen, we are going to pick questions from the audience after, but I'll start with a few questions for my panelists here. I'll pick randomly. So then we're going to pick questions from the crowd. I'll start with you, Erik. Let's talk about battery swapping. Is Africa ready for this kind of infrastructure? Do we have enough infrastructure to have this kind of technology in the continent?
I guess the position changes country by country. So, for example, if I take Ghana, the grid is quite well rolled out. So you have the ability to tap in. It's not always that reliable, but batteries definitely there can provide support against your core grid infrastructure for sure. And it works because it's cheaper. Yes, you need the CapEx invested to get there, but ultimately at an end user point, it's cheaper than petrol. So the economics should stack, and they do stack. In other countries, I guess it would be slightly different because if we take Nigeria, for example, where the grid access and reliability is really not that good, you probably need to be a bit more creative in using things like solar to help generate consistency in that provision of energy. But I would say that the critical factors are there. The batteries today are cheaper than petrol. And I'd say that, if you were to invest in core grid infrastructure everywhere, I mean, first of all, the timelines there are long and people need energy fast. So you're going to take a long time and spend a lot of money, which definitely needs a lot of investment to roll out a grid infrastructure like the West. And I don't think you need to go too fast there when batteries can play a part and serve customer needs. So yes, I'd say very ready.
How have you done it in Ghana? How have you been able to hack it in Ghana?
I mean, we again are quite young. So we've been operational for just 1 year. But we have solar on a single station and the rest is run off the main grid. And the grid goes down, by the way. So you then need to find ways to use batteries to charge batteries. But it's all really an energy optimization play.
Right. And Caro, talking about Schneider, the digital automation of energy management, combining technologies, sounds like a very complex, project here. How are you able to navigate through the complexity? because when startups hear this, they might shy off and say, how can we even try this? How have you been able to manage?
So we have several go-to-market strategies. We actually work with a lot of local companies where we equip them with the technology as well as the skill sets to be able to deploy some of these solutions. And what we do is basically, go through the process of training those local companies. And really, this is a play also for many of the local teams that would want to develop that skill set. So we'll train them, we will certify them, and then we will support them through the process of installation. And then we constantly equip them even as the technology evolves. What they do then is also they have access to the entire suite of support structures that exist within the organization. And they really become an extended part of our partner network. And that really is what we do very well, working through partners.
All right, talk about the safety of this automation of energy.
So, of course, embedded within our business strategy is really not just the efficiency, but also the safety of the installers. And before we do any installations, because this would be both hardware but also software installations, is ensuring that we stick to all the safety aspects. So, of course, if it is on a live site, we will have to ensure that we have a shutdown and all those topics that would be relevant. But really, there's a lot of work that we do even before we go to site. We will test the systems basically on a pilot site before we do the live installations. And safety is never for us a factor because we embed that in our practical elements throughout the process.
All right, thank you so much. And Josh, talking about motorcycles, Africa is a continent that really relies on motorcycles, and having electric motorcycles it's quite a big deal here. But talk about the cost, because most would not want to try that route because they feel like, if I can buy at this, a non-electric motorbike at this cost, why should I, go for your motorcycle that are electrical powered?
Yeah, so the cost is already very high to purchase a conventional petrol motorcycle. So what we have done is designed and built the vehicle so that it is more powerful than a conventional petrol motorcycle, but actually costs about the same. And in particular, because we have the network of battery swapping stations where the customers have to come to get a fresh battery, our asset finance partners are also able to log in and prevent a driver from getting a swap until they call or make a payment, which reduces the cost, ultimately reduces the cost of capital for the end user because it reduces the overheads and the default risk. And that directly translates into a net lower cost, even lower cost for the end user. But crucial to all this is separating the upfront cost of the battery from the cost of the vehicle. So what we've essentially done, and what other battery swapping companies do, is to make that battery physical asset capex cost an energy cost. Now, the inherent challenge with that, as many of you will know, is that it means that then those assets are on our balance sheet. But what we're finding is that now, as we've been on the road now for over 4 years, we have a lot of interest in setting up special purpose vehicles and other off-balance sheet structures. The other fundamental thing is that the batteries, because they're utilized so intensively by customers who are doing 130 kilometers a day, 200 kilometers a day, is that the time to recover the cost of that battery on top of just the fundamental cost savings that you get by going electric means that the payback period on those batteries is very rapid. For example, we could make every motorcycle, half of all the motorcycles in Africa electric, though those that fall within our current TAM, where we can earn a strong margin and still save customers money, that's about $13.2 billion. we could make all of those electric for about $4 or $5 billion. So just 1 year's revenue.
Talk about the charging stations, because Africa, like my country, Kenya, we don't have those stations. I don't know. How are you managing the situation of charging stations?
Yeah, so we currently directly build and operate those stations, but we have a strong partnership with Total Energies in Kenya and Rwanda, and also with SP, which is the largest fuel network operator in Rwanda, where we are increasingly working towards integrating and utilizing their forecourt staff to be able to build those stations, to be able to operate those stations as well, which unlocks an even faster rate of growth. But the stations themselves are relatively inexpensive and simple to set up. There's no cabinets or complex software. It's simply operated by humans.
All right, thank you. And Abel, venture capital is, we're seeing now VCs going towards climate smart or funding climate startups, but Africa, in Kenya, for example, last year a research was done and startups were the highest funded. But then you look at, in my country, they say vitu kwa ground is different, meaning things on the ground are different. When we see lots of money going into startups, but then we don't see the actual thing on the ground, what is the problem from your end?
Yeah. I think, I don't know how to answer your question, but I think for a lot of the funding, I think you're talking about Kenya last year. So Kenya last year was probably the leading country in terms of receiving VC investments, both on the debt and equity side. And a lot of that money went into climate tech companies. So the examples are, Sun King, Coco Networks, Kofa in that case. And I can say, I'm sure everyone knows Kofa, everyone knows about Coco Networks. So these are companies that are actually serving a purpose here in Kenya. So an example would be Coco Networks, which is one of our portfolio companies, which currently serves about 35 to 40% of households in Nairobi with clean cooking fuel. So they built like an infrastructure to support that. And they've been very, very successful. They've expanded to Rwanda as well. And, there's a lot of examples, Basigo, which is an electric mobility company we've invested in. If you go around Nairobi, I'm sure you'll see a few of their buses. And this year is, it's a 2-year-old company, but I think, a lot of people know about Basigo. And, Ampersand, for example, is one of the companies that, has really done quite a lot here in Nairobi in terms of, getting as many electric vehicles on the roads as possible. So I think, give it time. I think you'll see a lot more of these examples. And I think it's one of those things. Our thesis is that, there's these mega trends on the continent, which is, population growth and urbanization. And, our cities or our towns are urbanizing at a very rapid pace. And one of the things that, will be really useful for us as a continent is to make sure that we are growing in a more sustainable way. So making sure that our transportation is clean. So, making sure that we're shifting the demand for transport to a cleaner version of it, or doing construction, for example, in a much more sustainable way. Or, for example, waste management. How do we make sure that, as the city grows, we're doing waste management in a more sustainable way? So there's a lot of, if you follow those mega trends, I'm sure you can make money as a VC investor. And that's pretty much what we think is the way forward. And that's why you're seeing a lot of investors or a lot of VC investors actually shifting to that and trying to maximize on the mega trends on the continent and trying to make sure that, climate change doesn't become like something that is negative for the continent, but we can actually take advantage of it to be able to, grow in a more sustainable way and take advantage of all the possibilities that are there.
Yeah, and we have these startups or ideas that people have, but then when it comes to, getting the money from people like yourself, it becomes a little, what are they missing? Where is the missing link between, or maybe I should ask this directly, what are you looking for to give a startup some money to do their business?
Yeah, I mean, it's still the same, right? Like it's pretty much like, big market. You look at the team, you look at the, potential for exponential growth. Because as VC investors, obviously, you're looking for, hockey stick growth. And so if you look at a company and probably, they're not like thinking in that way, or they're not structured in that way, I think it's very difficult to invest in them. But I think, we've invested in 25 companies, as I said. And, a lot of those companies obviously some of them have failed, but a few of them have really been very successful. So, we continue to invest in companies. We're in the process of raising a new fund, and we're going to continue supporting businesses on the continent, and looking to meet as many entrepreneurs here to see, if they fit into the model. And obviously there's some good founders here. Kofa and Ampersand, I think they're serving a very big need. Great teams, great traction. So I think there's possibilities there, and we'll continue supporting businesses.
Okay, great. Okay, great. I'm ready to take any questions from the audience. Yes, sir. If you could address to specific CEO or just general. Maybe you can step up on the pulpit. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tijan Watt. I'm managing partner at Worry Ventures, and we are also venture building a company called Solarbox in Senegal, which builds renewable energy charging stations for electric mobility. So, taking a lot of examples from what you guys have been able to build. And so the question, I guess, is for Josh primarily, which is about adoption. So I think people realize that if you do the math, electric mobility is cheaper, right? But there is also this kind of knee-jerk amongst populations that electricity is expensive and inaccessible, right? So when I was in Kigali, I think it was 3 months ago, I feel like we're almost at 50% on the road being Ampersand motorbikes. So the question is about how do you get people to, where's the tipping point in terms of people saying, okay, listen, we're not going to use petroleum motorbikes anymore because it's just more expensive, more difficult to maintain. We're just going to go to electric. When do you think that tipping point happens?
Working? Is it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the one beauty of working with motorbike taxis and delivery drivers is that it's B2B, right? And our customers are acutely aware of their expenses and how much they spend every single day on fuel. But we did go a step further and do everything we could to make the comparison in the customer's mind as apples to apples as possible. So we made it so that the pricing of the motorbike is the same. They're the same finance options and new finance options available on similar terms from companies like Kofa, who are in the room here today. And then the way of getting energy takes the same amount of time. It's as getting fuel, and so on. So that was one way to unblock it in the mind. We even made the bikes red because customers wanted them to be red because the petrol bikes were red. We wanted to do green, but that didn't fly. Certainly, when it comes to electricity and the availability of electricity outside of cities, we did focus purposefully on Kigali and on Nairobi, on urban areas where there is more availability of electricity supply. And there's also some natural redundancy built into the system, because when there's an outage, it's rarely across the whole city. And so if you know in advance as a customer that there's an outage, you can go down the road to the next station. So there's some just natural resilience in the way that grids are more, I guess, fragmented, maybe is the right word, in urban areas. And the last thing about urban areas is that they are the density of vehicles is just so much higher that it's a lot more economical to build stations, to build larger stations, and to get comprehensive geographical coverage of an area. But we are starting to look more intensely now at rural areas, particularly in Rwanda, we're actually seeing some really encouraging data coming out about distances and utilization rates, which fundamentally really drive margins for businesses like ours.
All right, thank you so much. Any other question, please? Yes.
Hi, question here. Thanks for a great panel so far. I wanted to ask about electric penetration when it comes to vehicles outside of two-wheelers and buses. I think in Kenya specifically, we've seen most of the electrification come from two-wheelers and buses. But when it comes to four-wheeled vehicles and cars and things like that, will it be more market-driven, or like last week, Ethiopia announced that they're going to be banning internal combustion engine vehicles? Is it going to be more of a country-led initiative on that front?
Do you want to take that one, Erik?
Am I on? Hello? I would just back to your point around scale. I just thought I'd address that quickly. We are taking an approach of running this predominantly via partnerships. And so we think that you have ecosystems here that have learned how to accelerate adoption of vehicles. And our approach here is that there is enough expertise and infrastructure to tap into those kind of things to help drive the adoption. So for example, some partnerships here, some distributors of vehicles here, and even in Ghana, I mean, their retail dealership outlets are like 8,000-10,000 across the country. And they have a learned experience with an economy that functions. And so I think I don't think it's only about the savings. I think it's about the approach to sell into the local audience and market. And so in our view, we are taking that approach to then focus on the energy access piece whilst not trying to tie ourselves to the vehicle. So kind of partnership and integrated, because I think it's part of that. On the questions of buses and cars, I guess, I mean, you've got companies like NIO out of China that do swappable batteries for cars, but I think I would say at that scale, potentially quite a premium proposition. I think there are layers to the types of use. So motorcycles, three-wheelers, small cars, cars that need extensions on range. I think swapping can work there. But I do think that potentially it is motorcycles, buses, and then cars, because a lot of cars in traffic situations struggle to do the throughput. My reflection on things. So the motorcycles can get there because the energy throughput is pretty intense. You get, like Josh was saying, that payback happening quickly on the asset. Buses, I think will work, but it needs a lot of thoughts around the charging infrastructure. It's actually complicated for buses even in the UK to do this, where you have very well-functioning grids. But it's interesting because it makes such an impact on populations, on the number of people that use it. Cars, I'm not sure. I don't know if the cars can hit the price point unless you start abolishing secondhand vehicles. Because, motorcycles work day one. So I don't know if you have any thoughts there, but that's my take on it. I wish cars would come because I love them, but...
Yeah, so just to add on that, I think my view on the adoption, I think two-wheelers and the buses and probably some of the commercial EVs, like probably small trucks and vans and all that, will probably have a higher adoption to start with on the continent, because I think just, like from the beginning it makes sense because the operational savings, especially for a rider who's using his bike to generate income, it's very, the value proposition is very strong. Same for buses. Bus operators are actually trying to save right now because diesel prices are so high. And so if you can get like an electric bus, which is, saving you 30-40%, that's like a big saving for them. And so the adoption will be much higher in those use cases. But I think for four-wheelers, as he said, personal vehicles, it's going to be very difficult unless there's a second-hand vehicle market, or we start seeing second-hand personal vehicles being imported into the continent. Because for now, a lot of them are new and they're almost like 2-3 times the price of a regular second-hand car. And so I think we'll have to wait for longer to see a lot more vehicles. But I think I've seen a few cases like Rwanda where the government policy has helped to encourage more people to import personal vehicles, where there's no import duty on any electric vehicles. So in Rwanda, you'll actually see quite a few hybrid and EV vehicles for personal use compared to, let's say, other countries where there's no tax incentives to be able to import those kind of vehicles. So.
And,
Okay.
and I see we have Simon Davis here from Ox with a microphone. So Abel just mentioned electric trucks. Take it away, Simon.
Yeah, I just had to answer that as a founder of a four-wheel electric vehicle company. I think two-wheelers are awesome, right? It's a really great transition. Passenger cars are a complete dead loss because the passenger car market globally is a luxury product. Even in the UK, your average punter buys a used car. But where the really big opportunity is, in my view, is in logistics of goods, moving goods. Because when you move goods, you create a lot of value, and it costs a fortune to run trucks on the roads here. So an electric truck can be 10 times cheaper to operate, requires a business model, a pay-as-you-go business model, so that people can switch. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll pick another question, but in the meantime, Caro, I have a question for you. How much of energy can be saved with the automation compared to the traditional way of using energy?
As much as you want to save, is what I would say. We have deployed some of our energy efficiency tools, and I'll just give a quick example of a tea factory that we did. So we installed a solution which we called PME, Power Monitoring Expert, and one of the interesting discoveries that we made was actually not necessarily an energy saving initiative, but what we discovered was that the time that they were changing the shift, which was at midday, this particular factory had already installed grid-tie solar in a bid to lower their cost. But what they were doing is changing the shift at midday. So by installing the Power Monitoring Expert, we realized that the usage of energy at midday was the lowest. And of course, having a grid-tie solar meant that they were generating the maximum energy at midday, but their usage was the lowest. So just by changing the shift from midday to evening, they were able to maximize their solar generation and obviously reduce their cost of power. And so what we realized is that they didn't need to install an additional solar. They had actually planned to install additional solar because they thought they needed more. But by installing this solution, they discovered that they didn't need to do that, and they became efficient with what they already had.
All right, thank you so much. Any last question before we take the final remarks?
Hi, guys. My question goes to the Ampersand and I think Kofa guys. Great things you're doing in transportation, but the question is, for a sustainable future, we need to look at small businesses as well. And those guys, a lot of them, especially in West Africa where my company operates, they crumble under the crushing weight of generating their own power. So is there any plans in the future to pivot into small businesses and help them reduce their energy costs as well?
I think this is more for you, right?
Yeah, okay. So we are already using batteries to meet like micro and SME business needs, so displacing petrol generators. And our model is designed against this multi-use case. So we have customers in Accra today that actually are intercity, but are not directly connected to the grid, actually because construction is happening, so they've ripped all the lines out. But so they use the batteries every day instead of the petrol generators. And we think across cities you have this need. And it's not only cost saving. Like one of the biggest feedbacks we've had is, thank God there's no noise, I can talk to my customers. So the cost saving is like, yeah, fine, but they like the silence to be able to engage. Because once the generator is there, it tends to be very close to their shops. Sometimes they share it amongst each other, but it's noisy, it's irritating, to be honest. So, you know, it's not always about money and savings, to be fair. I think it's sometimes beyond that. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. I'll give a few seconds for last final remarks before we close because of time. I'll start with my brother here from Ghana, Abel. Oh, Nigeria, forgive me.
Sorry, I'm actually from Kenya. So for me, I think I'm very bullish about this transition to clean energy or clean transport, because I think I've seen this happen, through Basigo, for example, where, we invested when they pretty much had no buses on the ground, and within a year or two, they have, they're the leading electric bus company on the continent, and you can see, like how much savings and how much, efficiency they can bring to the whole transport system on the continent, and also how they can support the national grid, for example. So in Kenya, we have oversupply of power at night because there's not that many industries that use that. But then Basigo, they've designed in such a way that, the buses operate during the day, and then at night is when they charge. And that kind of, because Kenya Power and Kengen actually just let the power go to waste. And this is a very good way of essentially utilizing that power that is generated but is not used at night. So at scale, this could be something transformative for the whole economy and could get a lot more people, get the cost of power down because now there's usage of power at night. So really bullish about this space and looking forward to having a lot more investors investing in this space.
All right, great. Thank you, Eric. Any
Closing
final
remarks?
Yes.
I'm good. No, I think we've covered a lot.
All right, good. Josh?
I think I would say that we've crossed. I think we're out of the territory now of like proving does e-mobility work in Africa. I don't get a lot of questions about that. Even years ago in Silicon Valley, people were like, let's move on from these slides about talking about why e-mobility will work. I think we've shown, and other companies have shown now that this thing it's happening, and I think the choice now is not between, well, do we go into e-mobility or not as investors and as strategic partners, but it's, well, what is the best fit for us, which is the right team for the job. And to some extent, it would be like going back to, I was just saying earlier, we like going back to the 1950s and saying, do I invest in Toyota or Mitsubishi? Well, the only wrong answer really there is not investing in either. Yes, if you invest in Toyota, you'll probably make a bit more money, but I think I think that things have changed, and the nature of the debate, the debate has really moved on, and now it's focused on the details of the how, not the whether.
All right. Thank you, Carol.
So even as we discuss and talk about energy transition, I think we cannot forget to talk about how efficiently we use that energy. Whether it is in e-mobility, whether it is in clean energy that we're generating, whatever form of it, we believe that a unit of energy saved is worth more than how much we generate. And there's a lot of conversation today about let's continue moving towards clean, but we're not talking about how efficiently are we using that we already have.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Josh, Erik, Abel. I appreciate your time and your insights. And thank you so much for your questions, your participation. That has been my time, Victoria Amunga. Thank you.
Thank you. Clap for ourselves.